Okay, so yeah. So anyone remembers what we discussed yesterday?
Guruji, we discussed about Maya, that is illusion.
What is the definition of Maya?
Maya is illusion, Moha Maya.
Okay, and one more definition.
Sorry, Guruji, I don't know.
Okay. Anyone
It
else?
is the external energy of Krishna, Lord
Yes,
Krishna.
yes. Maya is external energy of Krishna. Therefore, one more definition of Maya is
Sorry, Guruji, the voice cracked, so I could not hear properly. If you can just repeat it.
yeah. Is it clear now or it's still
Yes, it's clear.
Not knowing
okay?
how to use everything around us in Krishna's service.
Yes. Can you repeat that? Someone was saying. I think it was correct.
Not knowing how to use everything around us in Krishna's service.
Excellent. Yes. So not knowing how to use everything around us in Krishna's service is also Maya.
Right, right.
Got
it.
It's Maya is energy of the Lord. It has a potential to be used in service of the Lord. So not knowing how to use is also Maya. Okay. Anything else that we discussed yesterday?
Abbreviation of king.
What?
Acronym.
Yeah. What was the acronym?
It was king.
King. Yes. What did it stand for?
K stands for knowledge. I stands for inconceivable relationship. N for non-worship and G for glories of bhakti.
Yes. Perfect. So K for knowledge, I for inconceivable relationships, N for non-worship, G for glories of bhakti. So any points within these that you remember?
It's 3 ways of acquiring knowledge.
Okay. What are the 3 ways?
Pratyaksh Praman, Anuman Praman, and Shabda Praman.
Okay. And what did we discuss about what kind of knowledge Krishna is giving in Bhagavad Gita 9th chapter? So very first two shlokas, they describe what kind of knowledge Krishna is giving.
Vijnanam.
Yes. Jnana and Vijnana Sahitam. It's including, the theory and the realized knowledge both. Jnana Vijnana Sahitam. Yajnatva Mokshashe Ashubhat. What does it do? So Krishna is saying this is the king of all knowledge, right? This king is not just an acronym here, but Krishna is describing this knowledge as king of all knowledge. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. Right? Guhyam means most confidential. Right? Pavitram idam uttamam. It is purifying, right? It is the topmost of all knowledge. Prataksha Vagamam Dharmyam. That's where the Prataksh word came and we discussed the 3 pramanas. So you can actually directly experience Sukham Kartumadhyam and joyfully perform. Right? Science of devotion or this practice of bhakti is joyfully performed. Okay, what about I, inconceivable relationships? Anything around that? Okay, if you remember the stories that we did yesterday, if you don't remember the concepts, at least the stories that we did yesterday.
Father is earning and his child is feeding.
Yes.
Father will not feel like, why is he just offering one spoon of food?
Correct.
Whereas it belongs to him, but he will be happy. In a similar way, whatever that you offer to the God, he will be definitely pleased with it.
Yes, excellent.
That's it, the bhav or the mood out of what you're offering.
Perfect. Yes. So that's part of the glories of bhakti. Yes.
Yeah.
Any other stories that we, right in the beginning, we
Discussed about Narad Muni's
Yes.
story.
Yes. So what did we learn from that story?
You spend time with devotees or good people.
Yes.
and absorb the good things from them, then probably all your sins can be washed away.
Eradicated, yeah.
Correct. Yes. And something else.
And the name of Narayan is the supreme thing. So even at the time of death, if you speak that word, possibly even if you have done sins, it can be eradicated.
Okay. From Narad Muni's story, what all he went through then. So he associated with, you know, the sages, the devotees of the Lord, and by their association, we learn that, you know, how devotee association is very, very important anga of bhakti.
He started to follow all their instructions and accordingly started to walk on that path, and that's why he became a great devotee then.
Yes. And we discussed in what ways can you perform direct devotion.
Yeah.
9 processes. Yeah. What are
Shravanam, Archanam, Dasyam,
Mhm.
then 9 are there.
Okay, yes. So Shravanam, followed by Shravanam is hearing, you hear, and then you naturally glorify, right?
Sankyam.
Sakhyam.
Sankyam.
So Shravanam is hearing. When you hear nicely, you will be able to repeat or speak. Kirtanam, right? Glorify the Lord. And once you speak, once you hear and speak and glorify, naturally you will be able to remember. So Smaranam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevan, right? Massaging lotus feet of the Lord. Archanam, doing Arti. Vandanam,
Vandanam.
offering obeisances, pranams, right?
Dasyam.
Dasyam. Who was the example of Dasyam?
Hanuman.
Yes, Dasyam. Then Nityam, friends, right? Krishna is the dearmost friend, right? And serving Krishna in the mood of friendship, Dasyam, Sakhyam. Then Atmanivedanam, surrendering everything to Krishna. Yes. So nine processes of direct devotional service. Yes. And we saw the inconceivable relationships, how Krishna is within everything, but he's still aloof. And we also saw, you know, gave examples around, you know, how all kinds of contradictions, they rest, you know, in proper, perfect synergy only in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then we saw non-worship. Non-worship means Krishna described about who are the Mahatmas, how they worship him. And then who are the Duratmas, right? Who are the Mudas who do not, you know, understand him when he appears in the human-like form, right? And you know, then from 11 to 25, we also saw, you know, a lot of description of how people worship Krishna in different ways, right? Somebody worships him as a universe. Somebody worships him as himself. You know, I am the Lord, right? Or somebody worships him thinking, you know, different demigods are equal to the Lord, like that. And Krishna says how, you know, even the worship of the demigods is worship of him only, but avidhi purvakam, improper or wrong way. Right? And those who worship demigods go to demigods. Those who worship, you know, ghosts, they become ghosts. Those who worship the forefathers, they go to the Pitra Loka. But those who worship Krishna will go back to God. Right? And then from 26 to 34, very, very important section. Anyone remembers? What did we discuss?
So,
Yeah.
can I?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Krishna's bhakti devotion. If we offer him even a leaf or a water or
Perfect.
simple fruit, that also is acceptable to him.
Yes.
So unalloyed devotional service to Krishna is
Perfect.
the essence of this.
Yeah. So that's the 26th shloka. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayach. Yes. Anything else in this section? What did we discuss as the essence of the essence of the essence of Bhagavad Gita?
So when Krishna kills the demons, he is actually showing his mercy as well as anger, both together.
Yes, that's inconceivable relationship or qualities that Krishna is exhibiting simultaneously. Yes.
The drop of ocean is also salty. In a similar manner, all the qualities of Krishna are already there within you.
Yeah. So we are same in quality. We are similar in quality, right? Krishna is Satchid Anand. He's the original source. We are also Satchid Anand, right? We are also eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. What is the difference? The difference is in quantity, right? Krishna is Vibhu. Vibhu means unlimited, and we are Anu. We are very, very minute, and thereby the capacities are completely different. In an ocean, right, you can sail a ship. In a drop, it's not possible. So, although we have same qualities like Krishna, similar qualities like Krishna, because it's there in Krishna, therefore we have also these qualities. But Krishna has those qualities on the absolute level or the absolute platform. Like the anger and the mercy are on the equal level, right? When Krishna shows anger, he's also simultaneously showing mercy. So the qualities are present in Krishna in the absolute plane, whereas in our case, it's not that, right? And similarly, the capacities are completely different. Okay, and 9.34, the most important verse in the entire book, which is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. What is the essence of Bhagavad Gita? Krishna says in 9.34.
Yeah.
Always engage your.
Sorry, carry on.
Yes, what is the essence of Bhagavad Gita? 9.34.
You engage your mind always in thinking of me, and
Yes.
you worship me, then you will be absorbed in me completely. That is the
Man mana bhav madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mame vaishushi satyate pratijani priyosam. Right? So Krishna is saying, engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances unto me, worship me, and being completely absorbed in me, you will surely come to me. Which is the essence. Krishna is asking directly, right? There is no doubt. There should be no doubt. It's very clear. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita as it is. Krishna is giving Bhagavad Gita, the essence of Bhagavad Gita, directly in the translation itself. Right? There should not be any play of word or any doubt. Krishna is saying, worship me, become my devotee, surrender unto me, offer obeisances unto me, and thus being absorbed in me, you will come back to me. Right? So you should not allow anybody else to twist these words and give you some other meaning. Right? Therefore, Srila Prabhupada wrote Bhagavad Gita as it is.
yes.
Okay, so let's start today's discussion. Chapter 10. So today's acronym, right? So chapter 10 is actually known as Opulence of the Absolute, and the acronym is C. So Krishna basically he starts describing in the 9th chapter, so many inconceivable potencies, and he also describes how he deals with his devotees, and how he reciprocates with his devotees essentially. So here in the 10th chapter, he again continues that most confidential knowledge, continues the discussion, and talks about his opulences. Because unless we hear about the glories of someone, it's very difficult to love someone, right? We know Sachin Tendulkar because of all the sixes and the centuries that he's made. Had he not made those centuries or not, hit those sixes and fours, we won't even know him, right? And we won't. There are so many millions of fans, right? They won't appreciate him or they won't be mad after him had he not shown that kind of opulence or that kind of skill, isn't it? Lata Mangeshkar is Nightingale of India, right? Because of her sweet voice. If her voice was not sweet, who would know her? So, so these are some of the attributes. When you know of the qualities of a person, you are attracted more and more. In fact, the word Krishna, right? So So the meaning of the word Krishna is all attractive. And Parashar Muni, he gives the definition of the word Bhagavan. Parashar Muni, by the way, is father of Vyasdev. So people say, oh, God cannot be defined and so many other things. But actually, Parashar Muni, he has given the definition of God, the definition of Bhagavan. So he says, somebody who's the owner of 6 opulences. So there are 6 opulences. Somebody who's, is the owner of 6 opulences in full is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what are these 6 opulences? All wealth. So, like we discussed yesterday, who's the richest person? I think Jeff Bezos right now. So Jeff Bezos can claim that, oh, he has, $100 billion or $200 billion, something like that. But he cannot claim that he has all the wealth in the world. Can he claim that?
No.
Only Krishna can. Only Krishna can claim that because he's the proprietor of everything, right? Everything belongs to him. So he can even our bodies belong to the Lord actually. If you see, you ask someone, they will say, oh, I worship my parents because they are the one who gave me this body. Well, yes, fine, but the parents did not know how to make an eye, how to make the digestive system. They did not know any of these things, right? It all happened in the mother's womb. Mother is not knowing कि इधर आँख डालना है, अभी आँख fit करना है, कान डालना है. It has to be, so many nerves have to be connected and then it will work fine. They did not know any of these things. So actually, the body is given to us by the arrangement of the Lord. And the arrangement is okay, fine. Within the mother's womb, things will be supplied so that the fetus grows and the baby is born like that. So yeah, I came to this point for so yeah, we were discussing the opulences of the Lord. So Jeff Bezos, he cannot claim all the wealth in the world. But imagine if suddenly we are right now 20 participants. Suddenly, the 21st participant joins on video, and that is Jeff Bezos, right? All of you all will stop listening to me and will be attracted. You'll be watching. Arey, Jeff Bezos is here, and maybe some of you might start asking questions also. Right? In a second, the whole focus will shift there because he's a very, because he's so attractive. Why? Because he's so rich and famous, isn't it? So having wealth is an opulence, and obviously it's attractive. If Ambani walks into your building, right, you'll run downstairs to see and meet him and probably greet him, correct? Because he's so rich, obviously he's attractive. So wealth. So Krishna is all wealthy. He can claim everything, all wealth, all knowledge. Very, very intelligent person, right? If he comes in your vicinity, immediately, everybody will start, hey, such a, intelligent person is here. Einstein walks, hey, you've seen that ad? All the kids are, with hair like Einstein. Right? So, it's very, very attractive. Somebody who's very intelligent is naturally very attractive. So that's also an opulence, knowledge. So like that, all wealth, all knowledge, all beauty, right? All renunciation. Even the sages are very, very attractive. Why? Because they're so renounced. All strength, right? And what am I missing? All knowledge, all wealth, all beauty, all renunciation, all strength, all fame. So these are 6 opulences. If someone has a little bit of one opulence also, he becomes very attractive. Immediately, people are drawn towards that person. Imagine a person having all 6 at the same time. And not in, small quantities here and there, like some, teeny mini Jeff Bezos or someone. He has all the wealth, all the knowledge, all of these 6 opulences in full. So that is Krishna. He's all attractive. And that's the meaning of the word Krishna, right? And even in, I think in Greek, the word becomes Christos, from where the word Christ also comes, right? It means all attractive. Okay, so that is the definition of Bhagavan which Parashar Muni gives. And we need to know that. Otherwise, if we don't hear about the Lord, or if we don't understand who the Lord is, we'll think, oh, he is just like some regular boy. And that's the mistake most of the people, they do. Oh, Krishna was a great personality. First of all, was? No, he is, right? God is not was, or he was not just some historic personality. He's actually the supreme personality of Godhead. So, and that's actually an offense to just call him some great historical personality, right? No, he is the supreme personality of Godhead, like that. So, we need to understand about him, and only then it'll automatically evoke love for him. Right? Okay, so let's start. So, so the first set of shlokas, which is 10.1 to 7, Krishna describes how he is the source of everything. So, connection between, we discussed the connection that to fix our minds. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 3.4 that we should fix our mind. So, to fix our mind, we need to hear about the Lord, remember him, understand his opulences and his qualities, and that will evoke devotion in our hearts by hearing more and more, right? So therefore Krishna continues describing his opulence. So more wonderful knowledge. Krishna is saying, Shri Bhagavan Vacha Bhuya Eva Mahabaho Shunu Me Paramam Vacha Yatte Ham Priyamanaya Vakshami Hitakamaya. Right? So here Krishna is saying, Shunu Me Paramam Vacha. Right? So here, hear from me. So again, he is stressing on the fact of hearing. And then he goes on to say that no one knows him. He's a mystery, and he's the mystery behind the origin of everything. Name Vidu Suragana Prabham Na Maharshaya. Even the Maharshis don't know him. Aham Adir Hi Devanam. He's the source of all the Devas. Even the Devatas are bewildered and confused. They don't know Krishna completely. Or, they're struggling hard to understand the Lord. Maharshi Nam to Sarvasa. Right? So, we come across in the Krishna book or in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, we come across Brahma Vimohan Leela, where even Lord Brahma, who's the first creator, right, who's the first living entity in the universe, and from him, he creates basically. So there is Mahavishnu. From Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu comes. Again, slightly technical, but just bear with me. So yesterday we saw the picture of Mahavishnu, all the universes coming out of his pores, right? And he enters each and every universe as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, another expansion of Mahavishnu as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu's navel comes the lotus stem on which Brahma is born. Brahma is the first living entity within the universe. So, and then this Garbhodakshaya Vishnu further expands and enters into every atom as Shirodakshaya Vishnu, or in everyone's heart as Paramatma as well. So, Brahmaji is the first living entity, and after him all, the Devtas and other people, all the Prajapatis and Manus, etc. come. So even Brahmaji gets bewildered, and I'll try and summarize the story very, very quickly. I'm sure most of you all would know the story as well. So what happened was, Krishna, he had just killed Aghasur. Aghasur was such a big demon, and he was so ferocious, even the demigods would be afraid of him. And they would be wondering, when will we get free from, the nuisance created by Aghasur. So this Aghasur, he could, take any kind of form. So Kamsa had appointed Aghasura to kill Krishna. And Aghasur also had to take revenge because, his brother and sister, which is Bakasur and Putra, they were brother and sister of Aghasur. So he had a personal vengeance against Krishna also. So he said, I will go and kill Krishna. So Kamsa said, why not go? So Aghasur had gone, and again, I won't get into that story in detail, but Krishna killed Aghasura. Krishna expanded within Aghasur's mouth and killed Aghasura. So once Aghasura was killed, all the demigods were watching on, from top, and they start showering flowers. They start beating their drums and bugles, etc. in joy that finally, Aghasura has been killed, and they were glorifying Krishna. That so wonderful, Krishna has killed this demon Aghasura. Brahmaji in the upper planetary system, in the topmost planet is Brahmaji's planet. So he heard that sound. And he thought, oh, let me see what's happening down. And he came down and he saw, Aghasura is dead. And he wondered who killed this such ferocious demon. And then he saw Krishna, having nice lunch party. You see this in the left side image? So he's enjoying lunch every afternoon. They would sit. They would be going there. They would be going and tending the cows in the forest. Calves, sorry, at this time calves. So Krishna was very young. So he was tending calves, and in the afternoon they would sit and have lunch together. And each boy would bring some dabba from their home, and they would first offer it to Krishna. Krishna, please taste and see how it is. And so they would first, everything they would do, they would first offer it to Krishna. And Krishna would take one bite and then pass it on, take another bite and pass it on, like that. So Brahmaji, he was watching and he was wondering, is this my Lord? Because Brahmaji earlier he had received the information on Shiv Sagar from Lord Vishnu that I am going to come very soon, right? So he knew, but he was still wondering, how Krishna is eating with all these boys and he's treating all these boys as equals. What happened was, all these boys and Krishna were enjoying their lunch, and then there was a very good friend of Krishna by the name Madhumangal. So Madhumangal is a poor Brahmana, and he's very fat. He likes to eat also a lot. So he was coming from far, and he saw how all these different boys, they're offering such nice things to Krishna from what they've got from their home, such nice palatable opulent dishes. And he thought, oh, I don't have some very opulent dishes with me. I just have some simple chas with me. How can I give this to Krishna? And he felt a little ashamed. Let me not take this to Krishna. It's a little embarrassing. Everyone is bringing such nice dishes and Krishna is so nicely enjoying. And how can I offer this chas? So when he thought like this, Krishna, of course, sitting in everyone's heart is Paramatma. He understood, right, what Madhumangal is thinking. Immediately he got up, and Madhumangal was at a little distance, and he started running towards Madhumangal. And Madhumangal, he thought, "Arey, Krishna is coming towards me. If he sees the chas, then it'll be so embarrassing for me. So let me drink it immediately." So he immediately opened, the container and started drinking. In one gulp, he was trying to take everything inside. And what happened was, naturally, his face was completely blown up like this. Right? He could not obviously swallow everything. And immediately Krishna reached there, and Krishna did this. He did this to Madhumangal, and all his chas from his mouth, came out like a syringe, came out. And Krishna opened his mouth and drank all of that. When Brahma saw this, he fell from his swan. Like, this cannot be my Lord. Lord Vishnu is the supreme controller. He's the master of everything. He's, he's the cause of all causes. He's, by his will, everything is just running. How can he, behave like this? Right? And who are these boys? How can he, this cannot be my Lord. This cannot be, the supreme Para Brahman, who's glorified in the Vedas, who's, master or proprietor of everything. So the idea is, the demigods worship Krishna in opulence also. So but they don't understand what is more confidential, or the most confidential, what Krishna discussed is this loving exchange between his devotees. So Brahmaji could not understand, and he was completely bewildered. And then he thought, but Krishna has also just killed Aghasura. So let me test him. So he decided to test Krishna. And what he did was, first of all, he stole all his calves. So while they were enjoying lunch, the cows were, grazing nearby. So Brahmaji stole away all the calves. And when the boys, they found that, oh, calves are not there. So they thought, oh, let us go and, look for the calves. So Krishna said, no. You please enjoy your lunch. You guys are enjoying so nicely. So you please sit and enjoy. Look, Krishna also wants to serve his devotees. Right? So he doesn't want them to, stop, nicely eating and, happily honoring their food. So he said, no, you continue. I will go and look. And while he was also eating, so he had little curd rice in one hand, and he went out to look for the cows. And when he went out, Brahmaji also stole all these boys and put them in yoga, in yogic sleep, and took him to Brahmaloka. And he went for a moment to keep them in the Brahmaloka in deep sleep, and then come back. So one moment of Brahmaloka was equal to 1 year on the earth. So meanwhile, Krishna, he understood, Brahmaji has done all of this. So he expanded himself into all the boys and the cows. So everything was Krishna, right? All the boys were Krishna, all the cows were Krishna. So that nobody in the village of Vrindavan detects that the boys are not there or the cows are not there. So for 1 full year, so normally what would happen is when Krishna would go out in the forest during the daytime, and when they would return in the evening, the Brajavasis, they would be waiting, at the edge of the village. Their eyes would be fixated on the path from where Krishna had gone in the morning, waiting for his return. Everybody, they would be like statues, with their eyes glued on the path when from where Krishna is going to come. So they would wait for the Lord, and when the Lord would come, all these boys, they would normally sing, what happened during the day. They would compose songs of, what pastime happened, which demon Krishna killed today, or how he played, or how he imitated the birds, etc. So many different ways they would glorify Krishna through different songs. And the Brajvasi, they would get to know what Krishna did in the forest during the day. So every day they would hear from their own children, or basically from these boys they would hear. So this pastime of Aghasura Leela was not narrated for 1 whole year. Why? Because the boys were gone. It was Krishna only expanded in different boys and cows who returned. So for 1 full year, the mothers of these boys, they would love their children, but they had much more love for Krishna. The Brajavasi, they would have much more love for Krishna. But suddenly they felt the same kind of love for their own children, because now their own child was no one else but Krishna. Similarly, the cows, they were more loving to these cows who had gone with Krishna on this day, versus even the younger cows who were more dependent on the cow for milk, etc. So this happened, and this went on for 1 entire year. And then, after 1 year, which is after Brahma came back within a moment, right, he saw all the same boys and cows are still there and still having lunch in the same spot. And he was completely bewildered. What is this? I just kept them there. I am the creator. I only created 1 model. The second model kahan se aa gaya? Right? How the duplicates are here? And then he was completely confused. And suddenly all these boys, they transformed into the 4-handed Vishnu forms. Because Brahmaji, of course, he knew, or he was worshipping Lord Vishnu, so he could immediately understand that this is my Supreme Lord Vishnu. And then he realized his mistake, and he prayed. And in his prayers, he chants. There's an entire prayer called Brahma Samhita. It starts with Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. They're very, very beautiful prayers. There's a whole chapter, of course. There are so many verses. But it starts like this, where he says that Krishna is the primable Lord. He is the cause of all causes. Ishvara Parama Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sachidananda Vigraha, his form is not just like an ordinary human being made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, but his form is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. He is a form of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. Anadir Adir Govinda. He is the source of everything. He has no other source. Right? You find these intellectual people who say, "Oh, if everything comes from God, where does God come from?" Right? Oh, who was his father? Who was his father? Or who is his father? So like that, you can go on and on and on. And when you're exhausted, and the ultimate end is the Lord only. Right? So he has Anadir Adir Govinda. He is the beginning of everything. He has no beginning himself. Right? We with our limited brains, we try to apply the material calculation. Yeah, okay, there has to be something more like that. But ultimately, the end is the Lord itself. Sarva Karanikaram, he is the cause of all causes. So this was the pastime. It indicates how even the greatest of the demigods, Brahmaji, was completely bewildered, and then he actually comes down and with his four heads, he touches the lotus feet of Krishna and begs forgiveness for his mistake. Right? In fact, so much so, he repents that he wants to, atone for his mistake by taking the dust of these Brajvasis, because he realizes how elevated these people are. They are direct associates of the Lord. They are not ordinary. So how elevated these people are. He wanted to take the dust off their lotus feet. So what he does, he becomes, the four hills of Barsana. Right? Barsana is the village of Srimati Radharani. So he becomes the four hills of Barsana. So that, when somebody is doing, devotees are doing Barsana Parikrama, they're actually walking on the head of Brahma. Right? Similarly, Lord Shiva, he becomes Nandgaon, and Nandigram becomes a hill of Nandigram, which is nothing but Nandgaon, where Krishna played his pastimes. And then even Lord Vishnu himself, he is manifested as Giriraj Govardhan, which is the next pastime we're going to talk about. So Krishna, how inconceivable he is. Again, talking about his opulences or his energies. So when he was just 7 years old, he lifted, Govardhan Hill. Everyone knows this, for 7 days and 7 nights continuously. And it was effortless for Krishna, just at the tip of his, edge of his finger nail. He was easily lifting, and he smashed the pride of Indra, who thought, oh, how can, these villagers stop my yajna? So actually Krishna saw that Indra had become puffed up, and he saw how Brajvasis every year they would offer Indra Puja for the rains. So he actually instructed, why do we need to offer, puja to Indra? He is duty bound to provide rains. It's because of, the collective karma of people, he is duty bound to provide rains. Rains are also happening on top of the ocean where it's not required. So what is something great that Indra is doing? Rather, you should worship Govardhan Hill, who's providing us everything. So like that, Krishna convinced, and all the Brajvasis being completely, in love with Krishna, they immediately agreed, and whatever was there as, paraphernalia for Indra Puja, they immediately put for worshipping Govardhan Hill. Indra was enraged, and he, showered, he actually summoned clouds. Samvartaka clouds is described. These are clouds which are used for devastation. So during devastation, the whole universe is filled with water. So those kinds of clouds which are used for devastation, he called those to actually devour Vrindavan completely. But to his great shock and surprise, even those clouds failed. And those clouds, one raindrop was the size of a pillar. That kind of continuous rain was happening. And the snow, hailstorms, etc. Everything was happening. But inside, under the umbrella of Govardhan Hill, the devotees were completely peaceful, without even slightest stress or anxiety. They were just absorbed looking at Krishna and enjoying the association of Krishna, because all of these devotees, they would see Krishna only some part of the day. Every day they would not be able to look at Krishna or be with him all the time. But during these 7 days and 7 nights, they were able to be with Krishna all the time. So they were very happy. They were having a festival inside. While Indra outside was struggling hard, and being frustrated, ultimately he realized that, he's done a big mistake. And he comes down and, offer prayers to Krishna and does his Abhishek using his elephant Airavat. And just so that Krishna forgives him, he also brings Surabhi cow along with him from the heavens. So Indra knows that, Krishna is very favorable or very loves cows. So he brought Surabhi Mata along so that Krishna easily forgives him. And then Krishna indicates to Nand Maharaj, you are doing, Indra Puja since so many years. Did Indra ever come and see you here? See, he's offering prayers to me like that. So, so we understand how, even the demigods, they fail to understand the Lord, or they are also confused, they are also bewildered. So it's very, very difficult, or they cannot easily, we cannot easily understand Krishna. But somebody who's a devotee, if you simply hear, give an oral reception to a great devotee who's talking about the Lord, very easily one can understand and slowly and gradually develop the love for Krishna. So in the third verse, he says, one who knows Krishna, and he now talks about the result of what is the result of knowing Krishna. So one who knows Krishna is freed from all sins. Krishna says that various qualities and personalities also come from him. So then he goes on to describe more, right? So the main root word here is sarva papai pramuchyate. If you understand Krishna even a little bit, right? Sarva papai pramuchyate. You'll be freed from all kinds of sin. And Krishna is the origin of all qualities and personalities. He goes on to describe different qualities like intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt, truthfulness, forgiveness, control of senses, control of mind, happiness, fearlessness, fear, death, birth, etc. Non-violence, equanimity. All of these qualities, they are there in Krishna. They come from Krishna, right? They are created by me alone, Krishna is saying, even the living entities. Even the 7 great sages, the Sapta Rishis, the 4 Kumaras, we talked about the 4 Kumaras, and even the Manus, the progenitors of mankind. Manus are basically, sons of Brahma. They are assigned to actually fill the universe with population. Right? So even these progenitors, they come from me, and they are born from my mind. And all living beings populating the various planets also descend from them. Okay. Then Krishna is the origin of qualities by which one seeks to understand truth. He's the source of the sages. No one can understand Krishna by conventional means. You cannot go in a lab, do some test, look into the microscope, or peek through a telescope and hope to understand Krishna. You cannot. Therefore, the material scientists, they're all a lot of them, they have come to their senses. They are, and even the earlier great scientists, they acknowledge that yes, there is God. But many of them, they are so foolish, they fail to understand, right? And just through conventional means, they won't be able to understand the Lord. In fact, Bhagavad Gita, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the 4th chapter, 4th and 5th chapter describes how the material science, in Mother Prabhupada writes, the material science is limited to only understanding 10 to 11 elements, right? So there are 5 knowledge acquiring senses, 5 working senses, 5 objects of senses, and then there is the subtle body, mind, intelligence, ego, etc. And then there is the material nature, the living entity in himself, and the super soul, like that. So there are in total 24 to 26 elements, 24 elements, and then the soul and the super soul, total 26. But if you see material science, they only deal with 11 out of the 26. Whereas Bhagavad Gita, if you learn or if you understand, it talks about all the 26 items, which is basically nothing but, if you broadly categorize them, the 5 subject matters of Bhagavad Gita. The science will only deal with, the physical matter, and somewhere they've kind of touched upon a little bit of psychology, which is dealing with the mind. That too, not completely. But if you thoroughly read Bhagavad Gita and Srila Prabhupada's purpose, you'll understand much deeper, all these 26 different elements, which is also mentioned in the Sankhya philosophy. Okay. So appreciating Krishna's powers lead to surrender, right? So etam vibhutim yogam cha mam yo veti tatvatah so vikalpena yogena yujjate natra samshaya. Krishna summarizes, and now the Chatur Shloki Bhagavad Gita is coming. So Krishna summarizes the Bhagavad Gita in 4 verses later after this, right, which is also known as Chatur Shloki, describing the bhakti of the topmost devotees in the real nature of himself, which generates and nourishes that bhakti. So we will see what are the Chatur Shloki Bhagavad Gita. So that is the second E, or second letter in today's abbreviation, the E, essence of Gita. Right? So we saw the essence of the essence of the essence of Bhagavad Gita, which is 9.34, and in these 4 shlokas, like I was saying, it's Bhagavad Gita is packed and can be unpacked from these 4 shlokas also. So let's see. So 10.8, he summarizes his opulences and the results of truly knowing his opulence and become a pure devotee. 10.9, he describes how a pure devotee worships him 10.10 and 11 describes his reciprocation with their loving worship. So in scriptures, there are three concepts, and you can probably note this down, very important. So there is Sambandh Gyan, there is Sambandh, there is Abhideya, and there is Prayojan. Right? Three things: Sambandh, Abhideya, and Prayojan. Sambandh is establishing relationship with the Lord, or realizing or understanding what is their relationship with the Lord, what is our relationship with the Lord. So that is Sambandh Gyan. Then there is Abhideya, knowing the relationship, what is my duty in that relationship, that is Abhideya. And when I act as per my duty or as per that relationship, within that relationship, when I perform my services or I interact with the Lord, what is the result of that? Or which is nothing but the development of the love of God, right? That is the prayojan. Pure love for God is the prayojan, is the ultimate result or the fruit of that service, right? So Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan. In the first shloka of this Chatushloki 10.8, Krishna talks about the Sambandha Gyan, right? How we are related to this to Krishna, and how Krishna is related to us and the whole material creation. And he also talks about a little bit of Abhideya, right? How we should act in that relationship. 10.9 describes how pure devotee worships him, which means Abhideya. And then 10.10 and 11 talks about Abhideya and Prayojan both. So we'll see these shlokas. So 10.8, right? Krishna says he's the source of everything. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante ma buddha bhava samanvita. So Krishna is saying aham sarvasya prabhavo, right? I am the source of everything. Matta sarva pravartate. I am actually maintaining everything. From me, everything is coming. Iti matva bhajante ma. Knowing this, devotee, he worships me. Buddha bhava samanvita, and he immediately, he gets the intelligence, or he's the intelligent among men, and he also gets intelligence to worship me further, right? So, okay, since it's 8:45, I'll go a little slightly pick up some pace here. So, 10.9 it says, Matchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. So understanding my, transcendental qualities and different opulences, and what does and then having that natural devotion, what does my devotee do? So what does devotees do? So the devotees, they actually relish matchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam. So they enjoy transcendental bliss in discussing about the Lord, right? In talking different pastimes of the Lord, right? So here it says this great joy that a devotee experiences by glorifying is spiritual bliss beyond the odds. But how does he grasp who is infinite in form, qualities, and powers? Who gives them the method of realizing? The previous verse describes how devotee worships, and the next two verses describes how Krishna will reciprocate with them. So what does the devotees do is described here. How they are constantly meditating on the Lord, discussing about the Lord. They relish singing the glories of the Lord, hearing about the pastimes of the Lord, and that's how bodhayanta parasparam. They also interact with each other. The devotees interact with each other like this. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. And this is their source of transcendental bliss. So yeah, this is just a quick examples of how devotees they interact, right? So here somebody is talking about how merciful Krishna is. These are some sannyasis from ISKCON only. So then somebody is talking about how magnanimous Lord Chaitanya is. So Lord Chaitanya is actually an incarnation of Krishna 500 years ago. He's already given in the scriptures also. 500 years back, he came in a place called Navadvip, Mayapur, which is 3 hours from Calcutta. So if somebody has not visited and somebody stays near Kolkata, do visit. It's an amazing, amazing place. And somebody's talking about how beautiful and enchanting Radha Madhav is. So this is the life of devotees. This is actually giving life to the devotees. Discussing this, they're always blissful. Just like Narad Muni chanting on his veena, glorifying the Lord is so blissful always. then he says, how does Krishna reciprocate with such devotees? So Krishna is saying, Tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam preti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Krishna is saying, I give the intelligence to the devotee for him to come back to me. Right? So even if there is something lacking, of course, we cannot understand Krishna completely, or we cannot, we cannot hope to understand Krishna without him revealing himself. So Krishna, in reciprocation, reveals himself more and more. The more the devotees glorify him, discuss about him, chant his names, the more Krishna is obliged with love to reveal himself more and more. And he gives the intelligence of devotees to come back to him. And how does he do that? Right? How Krishna gives buddhi is described. So he says, Tesham evanu kampartham aham ajnana jamatamaha nashami atma bhavasto jnana deepena bhashvata. So Krishna is saying that, okay, let's see here, right? To show them special mercy, I dwelling in their heart, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So Krishna, like I was saying, like Paramatma is seated within the heart, and when somebody is performing pure devotional service, right, and especially when somebody is chanting, okay, let's hear this. So this is what is chanting, and yesterday we were discussing. Parthapriya, you remember that shloka? I'm somehow forgetting it. Vidhunoti surat satam. What is that shloka? Beginning of the shloka.
Shunvitam Sukata Krishna.
So, Paramatma, who's seated within the heart, and yesterday I think somebody asked the question we were discussing. So, Paramatma is seated within the heart. When he hears somebody, hearing about his katha or chanting, so the sound vibration goes into the ear, and it goes to the heart. And hearing that, right? What does Paramatma do in the heart? We'll see. So the shloka goes like this: Shrunvatam swakatha Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridayantasto hiya bhadrani vidhunoti suritsatam. So it says Shrunvatam swakatha Krishna, hearing his own katha, right? Punya shravana kirtana, which is all auspicious, and hridayantasto hiya bhadrani. Whatever misgivings are there in the heart, whatever layers and layers of dust or from lifetimes, accumulated from lifetimes, or layers of impressions from so many lifetimes. Vi dhunoti suritsatam. The meaning of the word dhunoti, if you would have guessed, it's actually cleaning, right? Dhunoti means to clean. Vi dhunoti means jahan pe bhi vi lag jata hai, vi dhunoti, right? Vimud atma. Muda is full. Vimud is special class of fool, right? So it's a superlative addition or prefix, right? So vi dhunoti means special cleaning. So vi dhunoti suritsatam. Paramatma sitting in the heart, when he hears his own names being chanted or his own katha, right, being heard, and therefore it is recommended that we chant loud enough for us to hear. So when he hears sitting within our heart, he does special cleaning inside. Right? All the kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mad, matsarya, all these 6 enemies in the heart are there. So Krishna cleans that. As and when you chant more and more with more seriousness, the mirror of the heart gets more and more clean. And with the shining lamp of knowledge, Krishna, destroys the darkness born of ignorance. What is the significance of this? So this ignorance, right, is actually the root cause of all our suffering. There's an entire chart. I don't have it right now, but maybe we'll post it. So there's an entire chart which shows how the root cause of suffering is nothing but papa, right? Because of sin, we get sinful reactions and we're suffering. And that pap also goes through multiple stages. Annam, kutam, bijam. Like when you do some sinful activity, there is a seed sown, which is basically a hook for you to do the same activity again. So it's a vicious cycle. You cannot get out of it very easily. So sometimes, people atone or there is a punishment. But even after the atonement or punishment, people still don't give up that propensity of sinning or doing the same activity all over again. This is the question even Parikshit Maharaj asks in Bhagavatam. It's just like elephant bathing. He goes in the river, he takes a nice bath, and then he comes out and he throws all the dirt on his body. So his bath had no meaning, right? Because everything, all the dirt, he covers himself again, right? So it's just like elephant bathing, atoning, but then again committing the same kind of nonsensical act, right? So how to get out of this vicious cycle? So the root cause is identified as ignorance. Ignorance of our real constitutional position. Ignorance of the fact that I am not the proprietor, I am not the enjoyer, right? Otherwise, most of the things we are trying to do because we want to be the enjoyer and the proprietor of things. So when that ignorance is destroyed, right? So Krishna is saying how it is destroyed. He shows special favor those who are endeavoring on the path of bhakti. He shows them special favor, and dwelling in their heart, he destroys the ignorance with a shining lamp of knowledge. So this is how he reciprocates. Okay, I'll take a pause here for 2 minutes. Any doubts till this point? Any thoughts, any comments, or any doubts till this point?
Not really.
Okay. All right, we move ahead. So the last E, right? Krishna is everywhere. And from here, Krishna starts talking about his opulence even more. And we'll see, how Krishna is within everything, and he's, in so many ways, actually, it's also food for us, our intelligence to identify and see Krishna in everything, right? So Krishna's supremacy confirmed by the authorities. So after hearing all of this, right, Arjuna is saying, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shashvatam, Divyam, Adi Devam, Ajam, Vibhum, right? He goes on to say that, yes, I completely accept what you're saying, and not just me, right? Even Devarshi, Narad, and all the rishis, and Asita, Devala, Vyasa, Swayama, so all these different sages, they are also accepting. They are also, accepting you as the Supreme Personality of God. Because someone may say, oh, Arjuna was Krishna's friend, therefore he agreed to everything Krishna said. No, even the great authorities, even the scriptures are describing about him. Even the great authorities, like all the sages, all the Saptarishis, all the devas, they're all agreeing or accepting that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, right? But yet no one knows you, right? Nahi te Bhagavan Vyaktim Vidur Devana Dhanava, right? So still nobody is able to easily understand Krishna, right? So only you know yourself. Swayam eva atmanatmanam veta tvam. Arjuna is convinced, but he is thinking about common people. So please tell me more of your opulence. Right? So he's saying, okay, just for the benefit of everyone, tell me some more about your opulence. He is saying, I'm not satiated by hearing about you. So this is the result of hearing about Krishna, right? From a from a good devotee or a great devotee, or at least a bona fide hearing, that we develop a desire to hear more, right? The result of chanting Krishna's names nicely is you would want to chant, you feel like chanting more. So similarly, hearing about Krishna, you feel like hearing more, right? So no satiation in hearing about you, right? So he asks or he requests Krishna to describe even further, right? So Krishna says, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, he says, my opulence is unlimited, right? Divya hi Atma Vibhutaya. And he goes on then describing so many things. He says, I am the super soul. Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutasya Sthaha. I am the super soul dwelling in everybody's heart. Aham Adischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Evacha. I am the beginning, middle, and end of everything. Right? And then, this is the summarized chart overall, right? What we'll be going through in a few bits and pieces ahead. It's quite a long thing actually, but this is the entire summary of what Krishna says. He says, among the Adityas, I am the Vamana. Among the luminaries in the sky, I am the sun. Among the Marutas, the winds, I am Marichi. Among the stars, I am the moon. Right? Among the Vedas, I am Samaveda. Among the demigods, I am Indra. Among the senses, I am the mind. So he's the best of all, right? That's what Krishna is saying. Right? Mind is the control of all the senses. Right? So among the senses, I'm the mind. Among the living beings, I'm consciousness. Among the Rudras, I'm Shankara. Among the Yakshas and Rakshasas, I am the treasurer of the demigods Kuvera. Right? Of the Vasus, I am Agni. Of the mountains, I am Meru. Of the priests, I am Brahaspati. Of the commanders, I am Kartikeya. Of the water bodies, I am the ocean. Of the great sages, I am Brigu. Of the vibrations, I am the Omkar. Right? Of the sacrifice, yeah, this is what I was talking about. Yagnanam Japa Yagnosmi. Right? Of all the sacrifices, I am Japa Yagna, chanting of the names of the Lord. Of the immovable things, I am Himalayas. Of the trees, I am Banyan tree. Of the sages among demigods, I am Narada. Of the Gandharvas, I am Chitraratha. And of the perfected beings, I am Kapila. Of the horses, I am Uchishrava. The king of elephants or the lordly elephants, I am Airavata. Among men, I am the king. Right? Among the weapons, I am Thunderbolt. Among the cows, I am Surabhi or Kamadhenu. Of all the causes of procreation, I am the lust for producing progeny. Right? So basically, here he is describing of the sex life. I am the sex life which is used for begetting Krishna conscious children. Actually, of the serpents, I am Vasuki. Of many hooded snakes, I am the Ananta or Shesha. Of the aquatics, I am Varuna. Of the ancestors, I am Aryama. Of the dispensers of law, I am Yamraj. Of demons, I am actually Prahlad, who is actually such a great devotee and the gem or the jewel of actually the entire demon kula in one sense. He is like the transcendental gem amongst all the, or the lotus amongst the muddy pond, literally. Of the subduers, I am time. So time is the greatest destroyer or the subduer. Nobody can stand in front of time. Right? Even the greatest personalities in front of time, they have to surrender. Right? Of the beasts, I am the lion. Of the birds, I am Garuda. The purifying agents, I am the wind. Of the holders of weapon, Rama Parashuram, I am the Parashuram or Rama, right? Holders of the weapon. Wind is actually very, very purifying. In fact, our body also, like we discussed, 5 kinds of airs, right? 5 kinds of airs, right? 5 kinds of airs. So if you purify the air through the process of pranayam, no disease can touch you, right? So of the purifiers, Krishna is the wind. Or the rivers, he is the Ganges. Or the fishes, he is the shark. Among the creation, he is the beginning, middle, and end, which we just discussed. Among the knowledge, he is the spiritual knowledge. Of the arguments of logicians, he is the conclusive truth, right? Vada. Of the letters, he is A. Of the compound words, he is dual compound, right? And of the creators, he is Brahma. Of the death that takes place at every moment, death that devours everything, including memory, he is that. Of future manifestation, the transformation, he is generating principle, the birth. Amongst the women, feminine opulence, he is the fame, fortune, memory, fine speech. These are actually attributes of women also. So amongst that, he is the fame, fortune, memory, fine speech, patience, intelligence, steadfastness, all these qualities. Among the Sam Veda hymns, he is the Vrita Sam. Among the poetry, he is the Gayatri. Among the months, he is the Margashirsh. And among the season, he is the flower-bearing season of spring. Among the cheaters, he is the gambling. Among the splendid, he is the splendor of the splendid. He is the victory of the victorious. And he's the effort and adventure of those who endeavor, and he's the strength of the strong. He's of the descendants of Vrishni, he is Vasudev. Of the Pandavas, he is Arjuna. Of the sages, he is Vyasa. Of the thinkers, he is Ushana, Shukracharya. And of the means of suppressing lawlessness, he is the punishment or danda. And of the victory seekers, he is the morality. Of the secrets, he is the silence. Of the wise, he is the wisdom. And all existence, he is the bijam or the seed of all the moving and the non-moving beings that exist. Right? So Krishna is all of this and more. Right? So he is basically describing, right, how he's everything. Right? I mean, we just went through the list there directly because I just thought it'd be quicker. So these are just pictures of what all we discussed.
Please share it on the chat.
Yes, yes.
on WhatsApp.
And then he ultimately says, there is no end to my divine opulences. So having thus explained his vibhutis individually, Krishna will now speak of them as whole. So he summarizes, right? And he says there is no end to all of these divine opulences. A spark of Krishna's splendor can actually pervade everything, right? So he's saying that Mam Tejo Amsha Sambhavam, right? Just with the small splendor of a spark, I am actually maintaining the three worlds. And Krishna is the all-pervasive super soul. Ishtabhyam idam Krishnam, right? So he is everywhere in everything, right? So with a single, again, this is the same verse, with a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support the entire universe. And that's where we end our 10th chapter. So Krishna has explained all his opulences and he summarizes that I'm all of this, but Arjuna, I mean, my vibhutis are unlimited. I'm actually describing only some to you because even Ananta Shesha, with all his hoods, so many thousands of hoods, he is not able to yet complete my glorification of all my vibhutis. So I won't be able to tell you everything, but I've described you some. But even this is just nothing but a small fragment of my, vibhutis really. And with that fragment, I can pervade or support this entire universe. It's extremely important for us to understand how great the Lord is, right? Then, once we understand the greatness of Krishna, then we'll be able to appreciate his sweetness. When Krishna, he comes like a small boy, there's this beautiful pastime of the fruit vendor. So, this fruit vendor, she comes, she's one of the residents of Vrindavan, and she comes out calling, please, anyone who wants fruit, take fruit, take fruit. Like that, she comes out calling. And Krishna, small boy, he had seen his father, exchange things in barter. So he comes out and, he wanted to get some fruits. So he takes some, and he's very small. He's probably 2 years old or something. He takes some, small grains of rice in his hand, and he's coming to, do barter with this fruit vendor. And practically he drops everything. Only a few 2-3 grains are remaining in his hand. But this fruit vendor lady, she sees Krishna. She's completely mesmerized, and she's so much in love with Krishna that she said no problem. She takes those 2-3 grains very respectfully, puts them in her basket, and tries to give everything she had from her basket, fills Krishna's hands, and Krishna's trying to manage and hold all these fruits together, right? And and then she goes, and when she's actually about to reach home, she realizes her basket is so heavy, and it's filled with all kinds of jewels, rubies, and diamonds, and gold, etc. And then she looks at it, she's like, oh, Krishna cheated me. And she threw away the basket in one corner of her house, and she went back filling another basket with all kinds of fruits, and she went back again shouting next to Krishna's house. And Krishna again came, and he said, oh, what do you want now? So she said, you cheated me. You gave me some gold, etc., and rubies, etc. I don't want that. So Krishna said, what do you want? So why don't you sit on my lap and just once call me Maya? Right? So Krishna very nicely looks here and there because, Mother Yashoda is not seeing or not. He looks here and there, sits on the lap of this fruit vendor and calls, so Maya, right, like that. And then she's in such ecstasy, she goes back dancing to her house, saying, oh, Krishna is my son. He called me Maya, like that. So devotees are looking for that, right? And they're not looking for some, business transaction. Just like I was hearing this class, and the devotee was giving a very nice example. Just like when you actually, say for example, you go to a station and there is a coolie, right? He comes running to you and he picks up your bag. And towards the end, he expects some money from you for the service he did. And similarly, we are also going to work, for example, nobody's in love with their boss that would work for them for free, right? We go to our offices, etc., just because there is a paycheck at the end of the month, right? Otherwise, no one would go. So this is basically, a material transaction. But we won't do the same thing with our parents, right? Say, for example, if you are going to receive our parents on the station, and without them even asking us, we lift their bags, right? We, take it, come home, right? We don't ask them, please give me some money, right? We do it out of love. So because there is a, heart-to-heart relationship, correct? And we don't even expect, we don't ask what to ask, we don't even expect, of course, and we are happy, we feel joyful doing some little service like that. So that is the kind of relationship Krishna expects, right? And when the devotee actually gives that kind of treatment to the Lord in reciprocation gives so much more, right? He also treats him like one of his own, right? So Krishna, like in the 9th chapter, we heard that Krishna is not partial to anyone. All the children are equal to him, but one who is very, very obedient and is dealing with him like that, Krishna reciprocates, just like we saw how he reciprocates, right, destroying all the ignorance, and he reciprocates, and you can feel that reciprocation. That yes, you will understand. There won't be even a pinch of doubt in your head that this is not Krishna. You will know when Krishna reciprocates. Right? You will experience it yourself. Pratiksha Vagman Dhamma. It's a practical experience by you, not by anyone else. If you practice devotional service to the Lord, you will yourself experience it. Just like Parthapriya Prabhu the other day was mentioning, when you eat food, nobody has to come and tell you that, oh, you're full. When you eat food, three things naturally happen. The hunger is mitigated. Tushti, pushti, and santushti. Tushti is hunger is mitigated. Pushti, your body is nourished, and santushti, you feel satisfied and happy. Similarly, when you perform devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master nicely, right, these three things will happen, right? Your material miseries will be immediately, right? This is one of the initial things that happen. Kleshagni. Situations might be troublesome, might still be there, but you won't feel, the suffering, because you're already absorbed in something so much more higher. You're like, okay, these are small problems. You can deal with it. It's okay, right? Kleshagni, it immediately happens, right? Tushti, right? Pushti and santushti. You automatically, feel nourished. When Krishna reciprocates, you feel more nourished, right? And santushti, and you're joyful because of that nourishment. And it gives you the impetus to do even more. And therefore, I said, when somebody hears about Krishna nicely, attentively from the right source, he feels like hearing more, right? Similarly, when one chants nicely Krishna's name, he feels like chanting more. Okay, so this is what we discussed today. So Krishna, being the source of everything, is the essence. We discussed the essence of Gita, the Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita, how the devotee, knowing the Lord's opulences and his nature, acts by serving the Lord, right? Sambandha, Abhudaya, and Prayojan. He understands his relationship. He acts in that relationship, and Krishna reciprocates to the devotee's service, and that's the Prayojan, right? So essence of Gita, and then how Krishna is everywhere in everything, and Krishna explains his vibhutis, right? And that how everything is maintained just by one small spark of his splendor. All right, we'll stop here. Hare Krishna. Any questions, any doubts, any comments? We can take that. Yes, anything from anyone?
So even the bad qualities belong to Krishna.
That's what I'm saying. All the qualities are coming from Krishna, but they are not good or bad. Good or bad when we are interacting with those qualities, right? It depends on how we use those qualities. And in Krishna, they are in the absolute form. So there is nothing bad about the Lord. Okay. Like I said, his anger also is equal to his mercy.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
It says cow comes under Satogun.
Yes. Yeah. Cow. So basically, there are three gates to human life. It is described, I mean, I've heard in one of the classes, three gates to human life. One is a cow, the other, which is mode of goodness. So you take birth in mode of goodness. If you're coming from, if the evolution cycle, when you go through Cholasila Yoni, ultimately when you're coming from the cow's body to human form, then you are born in an environment which is more in mode of goodness. If you're coming from, the tiger's body, it's again the tiger, you're born in mode of passion primarily, or the surroundings are more in mode of passion. Not that you are immediately in mode of passion and goodness, but yeah, I mean, the environment is like that. And then from monkeys. So, if the next birth is human form after monkey, then you're in mode of ignorance primarily, predominantly actually. It's not, all the three modes are always present in different varying degrees, depending on your association and what you eat and what you feed the mind, right? You will acquire, or some mode will be more predominant. And we'll see in the later chapters how Krishna, he describes that we need to be in mode of goodness as much as possible, because that's more conducive to spiritual life.
So monkeys comes under which category?
Tamogun, mode of ignorance.
And dog, is it comes under tamogun?
Yes, dog is also tamogun.
And elephant?
I cannot describe all the creatures. Actually, most of these animals, actually, in one sense, they are in predominantly in tamogun, I would say. Not that they are or rajogun. They are not in sattvagun. They are predominantly in tamogun or rajogun, because their consciousness is covered so much that they cannot understand. They can only their knowledge is limited to, say for example, there is Annamaya Kosha or Pranamaya Kosh, Gyanmaya, Vigyanmaya. These are several koshas. Even in Yoga Sutras, you'll understand these koshas. So, some living entities have very low consciousness. They're naturally more in tamogun, like trees, for example. Right? They only know that I exist and where to draw the food from. Or they actually just know where to draw food from. They grow roots and they draw, water and, nutrients from the ground and the sun. That's it. So the Annamaya Kosh. Then Pranamaya Kosh, that yes, I exist. Consciousness is slightly more. I exist and I need food. Right? And then Jnanamaya Kosh or Manomaya Kosh, that I identify myself with the mind. Then Jnanamaya Kosh, I identify myself with my intelligence. Right? Vijnanamaya Kosh and Jnanamaya Kosh. And then there is Anandamaya Kosh. When we actually are on the platform Brahma Bhuta, right? Raza, when we are on the platform Brahma Bhuta, on that platform, when we realize that we are not this body, we are the soul, that is Anandamaya Kosh, the last one. Like that. So yeah, animals are primarily or predominantly in mode of ignorance and passion.
Okay.
Sir,
And
what is the
even human beings, all of us, because of the animalistic civilization and society, right? We are no better than animals. We are also predominantly in mode of passion and ignorance. Very rarely you will find somebody in mode of goodness, and that's what Krishna is urging us to rise to the platform of goodness as much as possible. And there are very practical things that you can do to rise above these, at least these two lower modes, and be established predominantly in mode of goodness. That's the subject matter which is coming ahead.
So Brahmins, philosophers and scientists, which comes under which category?
Depends on what
Characteristics they have actually nowadays.
Yeah, if you talk about a Brahmana in Kali Yuga, right? I cannot
Yeah,
say if he's
There's so much difference between.
yeah. And a scientist also depends on, if he's a devotee scientist, a spiritual scientist, yes, he's in mode of goodness, or even Shuddha Sattva. But if he's a material scientist who derived Krishna, he's in the darkest region of ignorance.
So
Sir, what is
trees.
the actual spelling of Krishna?
Sorry?
Actual spelling of Krishna.
Krishna is spelled in English as Krishna. In Sanskrit, when you convert Sanskrit to English, the better spelling would also be with the diacritics, where you have diacritics are basically associated with the phonetics in English. So with the diacritics, that is more accurate pronunciation of the word Krishna, and therefore you see KRSNA with a dot below SNNA, and there is a apostrophe in R like that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sir,
Yes.
I have a question. That someone say that Lord Krishna is the real God and other are demigods. Someone said Lord Shiva is the only God and other are demigods. So I am confused.
Yes. So remember the example from yesterday. You were there yesterday?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Remember the example from yesterday. Our guy from Germany was trying to find who's the Prime Minister of India by asking people. And one person said, "Oh, according to me, Sushma Swaraj." Oh, no. According to me, actually, Lalu Prasad Yadav. Right? So this may be perhaps, or according to me, according to him. Right? So the absolute truth is independent of all opinions. I'll repeat the statement. Absolute truth is independent of all opinions. You may have one opinion that, oh, Shiva is God. Right? I may have another opinion, oh, Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Right? Someone here, maybe Aruna Raghu, I see, she may have an opinion, oh, no, Ganesha is the Supreme Lord. Or somebody else may have another opinion, oh, Durga Devi is like that. So, our opinions have zero value. Just like, say for example, let me take. Okay, if there is a sun in the sky, right? That is, truth, correct? Sun is there in the sky. But for someone who's closed himself in the dark room, curtains laga diya hai, right, and wearing dark glasses, and he says, no, according to me, there is no sun. Or the owl, he says, oh, sun doesn't exist. And what foolish. According to me, sun doesn't exist. Is that true? The fact is that the sun is existing. Right? That is the fact. That is truth. So truth is independent of the owl's opinion or the person who's closed himself in a dark room, his opinion. Right? Truth is truth. So similarly, absolute truth does not depend on somebody's opinion. There is relative truth and absolute truth. It might just sound a little bit more confusing. I'll explain. So don't get confused with the example I just gave about the sun and the example of sun I'm going to give right now, because this is also very apt. What is relative truth and what is absolute truth? Relative truth is according to time, place, and circumstance. It may be truth for you, may not be true for someone else. That is relative truth, right? So like it's evening for us right now or night for us right now. I may say, oh, it's night. I'm speaking the truth. But somebody, if joins this session and he says, no, sir, it's daytime here in the US. He's also speaking truth. So this is the relative truth. What is true for me is not true for him. What is true for him is not true for me. Depends on where we are, time, place, and circumstance. But then there is absolute truth. Just like the absolute truth of life. One of the absolute truth of life is everybody has to die. Irrespective of where they are, what they are doing, how much long they're going to live, even Brahma has to die. Right? So anybody in the material world, the absolute truth is, one of the absolute truth is they have to die. Right?
Yes.
So Krishna is that absolute truth, which is independent of people's opinions, not relative truth. He's absolute truth who's independent of your opinion, my opinion. So we need to see, right? Just like that guy who was confused, maybe this, maybe that. And what did our guy from Germany said? According to Constitution, tell me who's God. So similarly, we need to understand according to scriptures, who's God. Scriptures are like mother. They can tell us who's father. They can guide us to who's our father. Right? So the simple process of understanding who's our father is to ask mother. But we'll become scientists. No, we'll do a DNA test of everyone around. Right? And if you plan to do that, and the father is traveling outside the city, you do the DNA test of the entire town, and for hundreds of years, you won't be able to figure out who's your father. Right? So, it is actually, waste of a lot of time and energy. And that's what, we talk about Gyanis, right? In the yoga ladder, we had a section of Gyani Yoga. Gyani Yoga is still higher. There are Gyanis. These Gyanis are these philosophers or thinkers. And you will find so many books filled filled up by them. They will write theories. They are people who would observe nature for years and years together. For 50 years, somebody is just observing nature. They would be, in a, heavy storm. They'll be sitting out right in the, on the banks of the ocean, on the shores of the ocean, on some rock, and observing how the lightning is striking, the ocean, and how the wind is blowing. These are such kind of people, Gyanis, right? After years and years, a lifetime of observation, some Gyani might come to a conclusion that yes, we are not this body, maybe we are more than this body. And that is the first lesson somebody learns in Bhagavad Gita.
Sir, why in Hindus there are so many demigods and gods? I have a friend who is a Christian, but they only worship.
They have angels. They have angels. Greeks has also so many. In fact, if you read Greek mythology, it's very similar. They have Zeus, which is like Indra. They have Hades, which is like Yamaraj, right? Even if in Christianity they have concept of angels, etc., right? And Christianity, always a bona fide religion, right? But we see, okay, maybe tomorrow if we can talk about this a little bit more in detail, but I'll just give you a gist of it. So knowledge is revealed to somebody as per their capacity to digest the knowledge. But Christ said in Bible, right, to Joseph, or who was that actually? Sorry, David. Sorry, not Joseph, David. That there is so much more to tell you, right? But you are not ready. His words, right? And he said, come to the kingdom of God. He did not describe the kingdom of God. He said, come to the kingdom of God. He says 10 commandments, right? Thou shalt not kill, one of the, one of the commandments. Most of the Christians, they eat meat. So you can say that we are better Christians than they are. We are following one of the commandments. We are following the commandments actually, not one of them. We are actually following commandments, right? He said, thou shalt not kill. So why are you killing animals? So we are better Christians than them. And Christianity, like I said, Jesus said, there is so much more to give to you, to tell you, but you're not ready. And Bhagavad Gita, if you see, Krishna is saying, I am giving you the king of all knowledge, after knowing which nothing else shall remain to know. So it is the same science which Christ wanted to give, or Muhammad wanted to give, but is given to us in much more detail, in so much more depth, right? Because the knowledge is given to the degree you have the capacity to digest that knowledge. In first standard, I cannot try to explain to you Pythagoras theorem or calculus. The slowly and steadily you will progress. We can then give you that knowledge, right? The principles, the ground principles, the rules are the same. Just like in India, we have a left-hand drive, right? In some other countries, it's a right-hand drive. Here we overtake on the right side. In US, if you go, they overtake from the left side. It's completely opposite, right? Somebody may say, "Arey, ye to pura alag hai." But the principle behind these rules is to avoid accidents, to have safety for drivers. Correct? So the basic principle of all these bona fide religions, there are many unbona fide religions also, but all these bona fide religions, the basic principle or the essence is the same. Any religion which teaches you to know God and to love Him is a bona fide religion. These two things it must do. It helps you understand who's God and how to love Him. These are two basic things. Right?
Okay,
So
sir.
the basic principle is the same. According to time, place, and circumstance, the instructions might vary, the details might vary a little bit.
Sir,
Yes.
Okay, sir.
I have one more question.
Yes.
That will it be right to earn money and earn fame in this material world after meeting with God?
Yes, you can have after meeting with God or after understanding this knowledge. What is your question? Out of the two.
Means he performed yoga and he united with God.
If you have darshan of the Lord, like so, okay, I give you this very example. So there is a devotee by the name Dhruv Maharaj. Okay, Dhruv Maharaj, He was a 5-year-old boy and he was very angry because his stepmother had insulted him. And he went to the forest in search of Lord Vishnu because he wanted a kingdom greater than his great-grandfather, who was Brahma actually. So he wanted a kingdom greater than Brahma's, right? So, and he understood that only Lord Vishnu can fulfill his desire. So he started meditating on Lord Vishnu under the instruction of Narad Muni. He started chanting and meditating on the Lord. And 6 months flat, he had such determination that within 6 months, Lord Narayan was standing in front of him face to face. What was his desire? His desire was a material desire. I want to have a kingdom bigger than my great-grandfather. But because he was under the guidance of a pure devotee, Narad Muni, and he followed his instructions, and he, with determination, he practiced devotion, Narayan was in front of him face to face in 6 months flat. Right? And after seeing Narayan, he said, I don't need anything. I was running after pieces of broken glass. I'm seeing the real diamond in front of me. So Krishna will purify your heart, purify the desire from your heart, so much so that you won't even want it. And then he will give it to you also. So he gave Dhruvaloka to Dhruv Maharaj. So you may have all the ambitions in the world, it's okay. Even if you want to become the richest person on the planet, it's okay. Go pursue your dreams, not a problem. But the reason behind pursuing your dreams should be, oh, I want to become really intelligent, or I want to become really wealthy, or I want to become really powerful so that I can serve the Lord nicely. Using my power, my position, I want to teach others or talk to others about Krishna. If that is the mood, go ahead. Krishna will also support you to fulfill your dreams. But when he sees, oh, just like a father, if he gives 2 rupees to the child and child goes and, smokes a cigarette, will he give his 2 rupees again the next day?
No.
He sees, this guy is misusing it. He is not qualified. So 2 rupees ka 50 paisa ho jayega so that he can eat something at least, but not smoke cigarette. But if he utilizes the money nicely, he feeds himself also and he uses for, helping some friend also. The father thinks of, gives him 10 rupees for the next day. So material opulence and wealth and everything will also come to you provided you are qualified.
Okay,
and
sir.
Humble, and you won't be astray from the path of devotion. Krishna is very intelligent. He sees, okay, this will bring him closer to me, fine, give it. Will it take me away from him? Let me not give it to my devotee. Right? So Krishna, he personally takes care of his devotees like that. For others, Durga Devi is there to do tit for tat. Durga Devi with her trident, Trishul. Trishul is nothing but 3 modes we'll discuss, in the coming days, in the coming chapters, right? So her policy is tit for tat. She is Durga. She's guarding the Durga, the fortress of this material universe, right? She's the jailer. Okay, I think it's 9:30. We'll stop here. Otherwise, I can go on and on. Okay, so other questions, we'll take it in the group on WhatsApp. If anyone has any other questions, you can post.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Very awesome.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.